Hi ladies, and welcome to the Ethical Brands for Revolution 2020 Stitch and Bitch. Woohoo! And this is Kate's idea.
Love a bitch, love a stitch.
There's four of us here and we brought our mending and we're going to have a good old chat. So, but I'll tell you what I'm mending. I bought this lovely Aran sweater on eBay a few years ago and I love it, but it's got a big hole in the front. So I'm using this as an opportunity to mend the hole in the front. What are you doing, Izzy, and who are you?
I'm Izzy, aka the Quirky Environmentalist. Sorry, my thread just got a knot in it, as you...
Oh, no!
I am a sustainable fashion blogger. I'm also running a digital campaign for Fashion Revolution Week. And I'm currently stitching some embroidery that just says the future of fashion, because for the last day of Fashion Revolution Week, we're talking about what we want from the future of fashion, and I need an Instagram picture. So here we are.
Brilliant. I didn't say who I was, sorry. I'm Jo Salter and I run Where Does It Come From, which is an ethical clothing brand, and the four of us are actually all involved in ethical brands for Fashion Revolution 2020 this year. So Claire, who are you and what are you doing?
Hello, I'm Claire and I'm founder of Couchman Bespoke, and ethical tailors based in East London. We offer education on the fashion industry and teach tailoring skills through making and sewing of garments. We also alter clothes because that's the most sustainable way to be in fashion. And we make bespoke clothes because I will not make tons of clothes to sit on a rack and force down people's throats. So that's me.
And finally, Kate, who are you?
Hi, my name's Kate. I'm owner of My Apparel, an ethical, sustainable platform where you can buy sustainable fashion from ethical brands. Because I believe, and if you're going to buy new, you have to buy better. And I'm also a massive advocate for better fashion. So I use my voice and I call bullshit. Sorry, am I allowed to swear, Jo?
You just did.
Just did. To raise awareness of seeking the truth in what's going on in our fashion industry. And today I am stitching my daughter's school jumper, which has been lying on my bed for about 2 months since she managed to pull one little thread out of an arm and managed to do the whole arm piece.
Oh, no.
Nothing wrong with it. So as soon as it's done, I can pop it back in the wardrobe again like it's brand new. So that's what I'm going to be stitching while bitching today.
Excellent. But this is, I mean, we're doing this for a good reason. I mean, we're all sort of ethical fashion people, and mending clothes is just so important, isn't it? And keeping clothes out of landfill is so important. So if you sort of fall in love with a garment and something happens to it, then you mend it, don't you? Like Kate's daughter's school jumper, like my jumper. So it's just doing things with your hands is just another really important thing. We need to do more stitching bitching, I think.
But it's also a great way to slow down and think and just have your mind taken away, because we live in such a digital world as well. And especially during the current pandemic of Corona, we are so used to just everything being like told to us via TV, via radio, via podcasts, via social media. And this time it's quite nice to kind of take a step back and kind of digest everything that you've actually heard and listened to kind of form your own opinion too about what's going out there. Definitely. And especially in our current climate with fashion.
And I think as well, there's a whole mindfulness thing around doing something with your hands, isn't there? I mean, funnily enough, I was just talking about hand spinning and hand weaving with an interview that I was doing. And one of the real benefits for the worker is that connection, that mindful connection when you're doing work. You know, you're actually spiritually connecting with what you're doing with your hands. And so mending things, it actually is good for us psychologically.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of like running. It just kind of gives you something else to put your mind on.
But not as good for your bum and your abs.
No, that is the thing. I've really found that actually, going from a stand-in job to a sit-down job. I try and stand up and do a lot more if I can.
You do Joe Wicks on it every morning.
Oh yeah,
I
do it with my
do
son.
Joe Wicks. That's a terrible phrase, but I do Joe Wicks every morning.
I do Joe Wicks every morning.
Sorry, Joe, if you're watching. Sorry to Joe's wife.
Yeah. No, with my son and I, this morning was because it's a Friday today when we're recording this, was dress up day. Did you do it, Kate?
Oh
no, I must admit I didn't do the dress up. Sorry, Joe.
I only did the hat, but my son was a tortoise, but I did have a scuba gear.
I love it. How did you dress as a tortoise?
Well, we actually, because we're a bit of, I'm always making fancy dress costumes out of various things. So it used to be a big piece of green cardboard, and I managed to take it in at the top and the bottom and draw sort of shell-like things on for a previous. It was a World Book Day actually, when one of them was SEO Trot.
But that's great. That's using resources and what you have around you, and I think that's another conversation to be had, especially around Halloween and costumes and how they're made and produced and where from and what from.
Definitely.
Costumes are usually made of pretty crappy fabric and they don't last. So if you're gonna, usually I just buy some stuff secondhand and don't really worry if I haven't put it together very well, because it's still better than buying a cheap first-hand costume.
Yeah, those horrible shiny things like the princess dresses. I haven't got any daughters who are mad about princess dresses. Luckily, I expect Kate's probably been down there. But like the what's it called? What was that mad thing? Let It Go, Frozen. That was it. And they were all wanted these dresses, didn't they? They're so horrible. They're polyester.
Mongies.
Oh yeah, if they rub together, they'll set each other up on fire.
Well, don't. You know what? Did you see when the Claudia Winkleman?
Yeah,
that's true. Actually,
ever since that, I've been like, my sister, like, don't get them. I'll make something.
Yeah.
But she never, because my sister is obviously 2 years younger than me, so she's more in that fast fashion thing. She's finally coming round in like the last couple of years. She's finally coming round to.
Do you wear her down every Christmas dinner, Claire?
Hey?
Do you wear her down every Christmas dinner?
Literally, my mum has this thing. My mum is actually the worst. So she has this thing every time I'm around. She's like, right, no talking about climate change, no talking about fashion. And I'm just like, but seriously, I mean, like my family's quite good in that we're always brought up in, I was like the double denim queen when I was young and I didn't even know it. But, sort of like, you just throw things on the floor and then you kind of, wear it sort of like every day for like a month. And then you wash it kind of thing. And I kind of, I've realised over like the years, when I do get to sort of talk to my mum about it a bit more sort of properly, and I sort of say to her, we've been put into this thing that we need to wash clothes every day, or sort of like more often, that we have to wear, that we have to use conditioner in the wash. But it's all those things that's what's contributing to us needing to buy so much more.
And it's marketing, isn't it? It's all the money.
It's a sort of connection of all these things. I've actually, one of the talks that I did for the week hints on this, in that it's thought that people won't pay more money for their clothes, but it isn't. It's because they are so cheap, so why should they pay more?
Yeah,
it's that mentality, because it's put out in marketing that you need to have this outfit, that and then they make the clothes of such bad quality cloth, not that the sewing's bad quality, but obviously they are against a time limit, so that creates it bad. But also the cloth is very cheap, which is bad. So that, and then the amount of washing that we're doing, how we're washing it, is all contributing to being able to throw it away.
Yeah.
And then for the fact that it's cheap, it doesn't matter that we've thrown it away. It's all these kind of things that are sort of, whereas actually you talk to people and people do care about their clothes, sort of like they do have clothes from back in the day that, are of good quality. It's just that they don't wear it because it's kind of, again, we're kind of put on this thing of, oh no, it's old, so why are you wearing it? Like this whole thing with sort of charity shops, like it sort of gets when people are like, oh, but ethical fashion is elitist because it's so much more expensive, people can't afford it. When
Which is rubbish.
It is rubbish.
Exactly, it is rubbish. Yes, it is more expensive, but it's more expensive because you're paying everyone properly throughout the supply chain. And if things were done properly, and then once people are done wearing those clothes, they then go into the charity shops, and then the charity shops are selling on, again, ethical clothes, you know, sort of cheaper because they're in
the longevity out of it and paying more.
Paper wear, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
you know, but I think there's still this thing with like charity shops of being like, oh, they're, you know, bad to go into. So I think it's getting around that.
I do think there is a bit of an issue of accessibility within ethical and sustainable fashion, though, because not everyone does have access to money to buy sustainable fashion or charity shops. And charity shops are great, but I've noticed the more popular they're becoming, the more expensive they're becoming, the less accessible they are becoming to people who have been relying on them.
That's interesting.
There's that is another
issues there. And I think the impression that sustainable fashion is elitist and only for the middle class is damaging as well, because
definitely
think we need more people on platforms who are not, because most of the people I see in fashion are white and middle class, and I think that does need to shift.
Yeah, we have a panel, don't we, during the conference on diversity in fashion, and I'm really hoping that we'll cover some of these issues. And it's great. I know that us three may be, especially me, a bit more long in the tooth, but it's nicer to have a young face, somebody looking at it from, you know, sort of just reaching your 20s, aren't you, Izzy? So it's great to have that sort of side of things there.
Exactly.
And I want to go back to what
I think if we can like come together as a collective within it, because I've seen a few posts about this kind of recently, and I've been saying to them, you know, come together and ask other people if they need to buy a certain fabric, and then buy it at those larger quantities to get it cheaper.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then sort of like separate it out. Obviously, you've got to then think about, because I always think about this anyway, the postage sort of miles. So kind of like do it with people sort of fairly close. But, you know, like it's those sort of like kind of collaborations in that way that I think will
collaboration will really bring the prices down hugely. Exactly. And there's a lot of issues we've had as where does it come from around having to do smaller orders, which is good in some ways, but the problems are getting the clothing from where they're made to the UK, because people talk about things that are UK made, but that doesn't count the fabrics. There's very little fabrics actually made in the UK. It's got to come from elsewhere, and mainly Asia. So to get them here, so one of the problems has been the cost of getting small quantities here. Whereas if you could collaborate with other brands and were sort of book a container every 6 months from Mumbai to Felixstowe or something, then you'd be able to bring the prices down an awful lot for the brands who want to use those clothes or that fabric. So it's something that some of us want to look into, because it would certainly make things more accessible for people.
Yeah, and I also think, as from sort of a consumer blogger point of view, hearing from different people, different people's opinions on things helps us to understand what issues people are facing. Because if you're sort of, most people are within circles where they interact with people that are similar to them.
Yeah.
So I think if broaden the horizons and listen to people who live in a different world almost to you helps to make things more accessible for everyone.
Well, cup of tea going on up there. I want to go back to what Claire was saying about the things being mass made, and because one of the most important things for Fashion Revolution is obviously the quality of life and how the workers are treated who are making all of these clothes. And I think most people who are listening, who are at the conference, will understand what Fashion Revolution is all about. It's about giving some visibility to the people who make clothes and trying to make their lives better. But one thing that the reason we're doing this on a video conference and not probably in a pub or a sewing room is COVID-19, and that is having a huge impact on garment workers that are used to, rightly or wrongly, earning their small pittance from making our cheap clothes for export, and how things are affecting them. Have you got any views about that?
Yes,
yeah.
A lot.
So I think it was Fashion Revolution and also another campaign called #PayUp because in Bangladesh alone, because they're the main exporter of a lot of fashion and it's their main export, over $1.5 billion worth of orders have been either cancelled, or clothes that have been already made aren't being paid for. So garment workers who already earn a pittance and are struggling to get by are just being fired. So there's definitely a massive issue there, and there is a campaign at the moment to pressure brands who aren't paying up, because I think Primark owes something like $232 million in cancelled orders. So yeah, there's definitely, during Fashion Revolution Week, a good place to put
Is that cancelled orders that haven't been made yet, or cancelled orders on the water ready to be shipped?
I think that 232 million is just cancelled orders that haven't been made yet, but there's also cancelled orders that have been made, because I've read somewhere that the rule is that they don't actually have to pay for the orders until they've been shipped.
I don't think it's you say about a rule.
Industry.
It's a model, a pricing model that has been set up because the brands control it, and that's how they control pricing with their suppliers, is they play them off against each other with all these different terms, and some of the terms will be, we don't pay you for anything till it ships. Some might even say 30 days after delivery, whatever. I mean, one thing we do is, where does it come from, and I know a lot of ethical brands do, is we pay 50% upfront on order, because how on earth are they supposed to pay their workers if they haven't been paid yet? So that's what we do. But what is he saying about these orders that have been made? I read the same thing. So there's stuff sitting there that's been made, was all ready to be shipped, and is now not being paid for. So the people,
I just think it's disgusting, because I'm all for like the brands that have cancelled orders, because I understand if they're not gonna, it's not quite the right time to be promoting clothes, people aren't going to be shopping necessarily. But then when I started hearing about the ones who have got orders that have already been made and they still haven't paid, I'm just like, that is wrong. That is fundamentally wrong.
It is, but also it's to do with fashion. To do with seasons as well, isn't it? So some of them have made clothes for the summer, and they're thinking, well, we won't be able to sell them.
Exactly. But then they need to be more creative in how they do things, and that's why within the ethical sort of community or industry, because I kind of class it as a totally different industry, that's why we only have spring, summer, autumn, winter. We don't have all these silly little ones in between. Like when I used to work in the high street, it's sort of you get lost track of like how much stuff you're being
sort of thing.
It's like every week I'd get another delivery of like another trend, and it's just like ridiculous. But yeah, what I do think within it, because obviously we're seeing this massive change over here in the UK, with sort of how the government's coming in and helping, and I just think they are as much to blame as these fashion houses, not necessarily for how the fashion industry is going, but in that they should be helping these workers, like there's, because I heard, because my worry, I think, yes, they shouldn't be working, but obviously they need to still be getting some sort of money, I was in total panic and went and joined on to Universal Credit, because I was like, I've got to think about when I'm going to get my rent from. But obviously countries like that, India and such, they don't have those things set up. Which is wrong, obviously. And so then I've also heard that these workers in some of the factories are being forced to go in because they have to get money. So, like they're going to be like the same sort of squashed up as they usually are, brushing past people, because they've got to think about, how am I going to earn money? They can't think, oh, this virus or plague is coming, sort of, I've got to think about myself and my family, because they've got to die
of starvation instead of corona.
They've got to think about themselves and family for other reasons.
However, also what comes into this is, again, the traceability of the supply chain, because there's foods that aren't even been picked up, where the factories, they're subcontracting out to workers.
And that's why these companies need to be more responsible for that. I don't care all this, oh, we didn't know that they were going to that factory, so then you should be out there. That's why I really think they should own their own factories.
Yeah, isn't there stages though? There's the big companies that we see, but also the supplier as well, as well as the factories. So
I know, but that's why I think the companies should be more involved in that supply. Yeah, exactly.
It's a horrible. Yeah, exactly. It's if they're not going to start tearing apart these supply chains for transparency after this, is a effing disgrace.
Yeah.
Well done for not swearing.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I bet Izzy's probably going to say the same as me here, because Claire was talking about how the factories in India and all these other countries are having to go in and work. But we know, don't we, that in the UK, companies like Pretty Little Thing, and I am going to name names.
Up north, yeah.
And they've actually been in the news.
When they were talking about it.
Yeah, they've been in the news because the employees have actually been saying we have to go into work and we can't.
Yeah.
Because
in ASOS, their workers just walked out because 3 ambulances were called in one day. And their response to that was to put on a flash sale to try and sell more clothes. So the workers just walked out. They striked because they were like, we are not safe. We are not staying 2 meters apart. We should not be working. And Pretty Little Thing have put a disclaimer on their website to say, oh, our workers are standing 2 meters apart and all the rest of it. But the fact is that it's not essential to be putting up 100 items a day on your website. Like fashion right now is not an essential, especially for a big company like that should be able to keep going but they're not even having to pay their workers.
Yeah, if their company is strong enough, they'll last the tide, exactly. And it's the same with like Next as well. So Next, we've seen what they've done. They've opened up their online. Next have opened up their online, and as soon as they get to capacity, they close. So they only open online for about an hour until they get full capacity, and then they do it again. But what they're doing is, I don't know whether they're then creating more of a consume kind of, I've got to get on, I've got to buy it
now, I've got to buy anything I can.
What does anyone physically need now?
Yeah.
Now is the time to kind of look around you, in your house, in your wardrobe, with your stuff, and go, well, what do I need to be adding to this now? And this is coming from me who sells clothes. You know what I mean? And I've always said, the clothes that you buy, buy for joy, buy for longevity, enjoy it, love it, buy because you want it, and it's, but when you're in the time like this, what do you physically need from Next? That's so freaking important.
But I think it's a market thing, isn't it? Because where does it come from? We've had very few sales over the last few weeks, and I've kind of, that's just the way it is as far as I'm concerned. I'm not out there on social media trying to push it or anything, because it doesn't seem the right kind of thing to do. Yeah. But is it to do with market? Because most of our market is sort of 30 plus, really. Is it the young teenagers who are buying all this stuff? Are they wearing it around the house? Where are they going in this stuff?
Well, I did see, because I was looking at Pretty Little Thing, because one of my most popular posts ever that still gets me 50 views a week on my website is a review I did about 7 years ago of Pretty Little Thing. So I've written a post basically to say everything that's wrong with them, so that I can link to that and be like, please don't shop here.
Yeah.
But because I was looking into that, and their most popular items are all like joggers, because people want like matching jogging sets.
I've said I'm going to go into that business.
I want to quickly go back to the supply chains because a lot of them, although they're not making clothes, have now switched to making PPE. Now people are saying, oh, look at all this good PPE is being made, but it's not okay because they're still being made in sweatshop condition.
Yeah, exactly.
People making them are still not safe, and it doesn't mean it's okay just because they're helping to make more privileged people safe,
No,
exactly.
It's very difficult, isn't it? It's very difficult.
But also
the fabric's coming for all that stuff as well.
Wow, yeah.
You've got to think the cotton, the harvest is going to, they've all been shut down, haven't they?
Yeah,
so they either go and harvest and go against the government and they could get ill as well, or they sit and they just let it all go.
Die. Yeah.
And then also, just for, if we're naming names, Fashion Nova in America, obviously that's a huge influencer from the Kardashians to anyone else really on that kind of reality platform. They put out an email as soon as their, for example, their equivalent to our universal credit checks arrived. They emailed everyone saying, oh, we've got 80% off our, and buy here with your check. Now your checks have dropped. Come and spend it here. There's no sugar coat in it. It was getting you to come and spend your check.
Subtle.
With them.
Very subtle. No, it's a strange old world, isn't it? I mean, it's the conference this week, we've got panels on culture change, which hopefully some of this will come out in as well. And we've got quite a few. I'm really looking forward to hearing the interviews with some of the suppliers and some of
get their take on it.
Exactly what's actually happening. And I'm hoping to have a chat with Lucy Siegel as well, because she's launched a podcast with Livia Firth about talking about this whole COVID-19 and the effect on garment workers, and they're talking to some of the factories. And we've also got Labour Behind the Label coming in as well, and they've got a big campaign going on how we can protect garment workers during COVID-19. So
they're doing a live blog as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
As well, so you can kind of real time to see what's going on.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, there's lots of really good stuff going on, but I found trying to contact suppliers, I mean, they're all in lockdown. We do most of our work with India and they're in lockdown, so it's quite hard. I mean, one of the suppliers we've used down in Tamil Nadu, I heard that because his farms were not quite so close, they were within a few miles from where he lived, he left his mobile at home and went out to the farm, got locked down.
Oh no!
And he hasn't been able to get to his
mobile farm.
So yeah, the cotton farm. So yeah, so because they didn't give any notice in India. They basically said, right, in 3 hours.
Like 5 hours notice.
Yeah, 5 hours. That's right, and that's impacted a lot of the because of the sort of urbanisation. A lot of people go from the countryside and work in the cities, and they couldn't then get home to their families in the country, which was what the government quite understandably wanted to happen, because they didn't want them to be spreading the disease from the cities to the country.
Yeah,
millions of people have started walking home.
Yeah,
because I read a news story where people have been killed on the roads at night and there was this one woman, I think she was in her 80s, and she was like, yep, I'm walking 348 miles back to my home village. And there's a mass migration now of people trying to get home, which obviously is spreading the virus and is doing the opposite of what the government wants it to do.
Exactly. It's very difficult. And I think from what I was talking to someone the other day who's in Gujarat, and she was saying that the villages are putting in some kinds of quarantine now. So when people do get back, they have to be in quarantine for 14 days, which is...
Yeah, and they're trying to work with the heads of a lot of villages to look at people who are coming in and making sure that they're not then spreading it to the whole village.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, at least they're putting education that way.
Yeah, so it's such a different culture from here, such a big country and very rurally based.
That's the thing, yeah. And
anyway, I don't want to. We could talk all day. I know. Are there any more key things? I've mended my hole now.
Oh, lucky you!
Only a little hole. Not the weather's too nice for us.
I think from what happens next, because I asked the question: will fast fashion get better or worse? And it was a mixed bag, really, but one that did stand out, saying someone said, I think it's going to get worse in terms of people will carry on shopping and will only double, because people do have an addiction to shopping, and I think I think it will just get worse, and they will just buy more and consume more without, when you put a restriction on something, they need to have a release. I want to be more idealistic, and I want to be more like, I think people will look at their stuff more, and they will buy less, and they'll have more knowledge in terms of supply chains and where their stuff comes from. But that's just me being, me.
I think there's been an impact on sustainability generally, though, hasn't it? It's a shame that Jen Gale couldn't make it, because she was going to join us this morning to talk about sustainability. But I think people are having to buy things with plastic where they haven't wanted to, and our bins aren't collected now. So it's been a big impact for everybody, and I suppose people being worried about catching the virus has made them want to get things in plastic and spraying everything and using. So there's been a big knockback on sustainability in general, I would say. It's
the amount of gloves I've seen in car parks that have been discarded on the floor. I think that's I think it's disgusting, really.
It really is.
I think as well, it kind of adds the importance of, because the government was it last year or the year before, rejected the fast fashion bill that
Yeah.
was
Last year.
Don't get Kate
trying to get
started.
back on the table now because they're saying it's needed more than ever now because you can see the impact that fast fashion is having.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking to a couple of people today to see, because obviously the Fix It Fashion inquiry didn't get put on their agenda, and they opened up the submissions for topics that they need to discuss. And even though that we have been quite vocal about getting it back on, I don't actually know to date how much of an impact that has made. So hopefully today, after some conversations, we'll have more of an idea of clarity around it.
Very good.
But I do think it's going to still be hard work to get some proper legalization and regulation because don't forget, this isn't really about the world, this is about the UK and what we can do. And hopefully then it will filter through supply chains. It is about getting governments across the board to be involved, which is hard. It's hard enough to get our own government involved, honestly.
Especially not at the moment.
For sure. So I've got some really interesting conversations happening today, which is really cool, for Fashion Revolution, for Joe's and the team's piece next week. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to have a really good inside knowledge from the EAC today to see what's going on and what they've been doing as well, because I find projects like this, we go all in and then you never hear again anything afterwards. You don't know what's happening behind the scenes and what they're doing and why they're not doing it. It's kind of in and out. So yeah, we'll see.
Brilliant.
Well, this is needs to be big.
Yeah, we'll be big.
We're gonna affect a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end on a nice positive note, because I was going to think one thing, can seem a bit doom and gloom, but when you see pictures of clean air where factories used to be, like over China, and air quality in Delhi apparently has gone from being critical to being healthy. Wow. It just shows you what, although we don't want to be in lockdown, it just shows you the positive effects on the planet and the sustainability from that. So how can we learn from this and move forward with it?
Yeah, I don't like seeing that on its own as a positive, because obviously this isn't a practical way to live.
No.
However, I think that it can sort of make people realise what systems we've been living in, and what systems we want to change to live in the future. Because I've seen a lot of people who live, because I don't live in London, who have been saying that they've noticed the effect on them of the air quality improving, and they're saying they don't want to go back to how it was before, because they're noticing even in the short time that it's having a positive effect on them. So yeah, I definitely don't want to live like this forever, but
yeah. I used to work in the Canary Wharf Tower, and you used to be on the 30th floor, and you used to be able to see the smog line.
Wow.
That's how crazy it was. In the morning you could see it all like rise and then sit there all day. That's how crazy it was. But I think so it's important that people realise that, change doesn't happen overnight. And if for example the sustainable umbrella of people is quite small still, relatively small, so if it's capturing a few more people under that umbrella, that's fantastic. It's all about just collating and more of us doing good, and that's important. If we can just have another handful of people, that's just even more people to help our planet better.
Brilliant.
That's the thing, it's about sort of what we can do as a greater collective of people,
more the merrier.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm going to end it now, otherwise we could talk all day, I'm sure, of doing our sewing. So I want to say thank you to Claire Couchman, to Kate Auguste, and to Izzy McLeod, and to me, Jo Salter. Thank you all, everybody. I'm going to stop recording.